Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to start this special webinar on AI chatbots. My name is Mary, and I lead content and brand at NetGuru. And I'm here today with Patryk Szczygło, our tech lead of R&D at NetGuru. Hello, Patryk.
Hello, welcome everybody.
We promised ourselves that we're going to do a series on AI chatbots because AI chatbots are a big part of what we do recently, a big chunk of our offering and of the projects that we realize. But today we're going to be focusing on RAG. For those who are not familiar with the term, we're talking about retrieval augmented generation. And what that is, Patryk will jump right into it. But before you do, Patryk, the simple truth is that AI keeps on making things up. And I'm guessing everyone in the audience has experienced that in some shape and form. The accuracy of the models depends very much on the task at hand and on the model itself. So we can talk about very different data, right? But there are some super interesting examples out there of where such hallucinations can lead and what kind of business losses or PR losses or even money losses it can generate for organizations out there. And one of the most commonly cited examples, I don't know if you heard about it, it's an airline example actually from a couple of years back. We're talking about Air Canada. Are you familiar with that case?
A little bit. I've heard about it. It was pretty obvious that, LLM promised something and it was hard to deliver on.
Yeah, so basically Air Canada's chatbot promised a passenger a discount. Doesn't matter, it was a certain kind of a discount that was supposed to be there, but it wasn't. And when the passenger applied for the discount, the airline said that the chatbot has been wrong, basically, and it argued that the chatbot is responsible for its own actions. Well, of course, they refused to pay the passenger the refund, but the tribunal in Canada held Air Canada responsible and liable for what its chatbot said. So they basically did have to pay out the passenger the discount as promised by the chatbot. So yeah, a chatbot making mistakes can have major consequences and can cause disruptions and lead to significant mistrust. So basically, to kick things off, Patryk, what is a hallucination at its core?
Okay, so hallucination at its core. I think I will start with explaining what LLM is really. So as we know, it generates the next token, but how it happens? So there is a thing called attention. So basically AI is paying attention to specific words that we provided in the context. So if we ask about something, it keeps attention about specific wording, and based on this wording, is generating next things. And let's imagine two examples. One, we just write the question straight ahead without giving any other information. It generates new tokens on the fly, so the attention is also generated. So if something happened that it will generate some weird token, weird word, or anything, and it tries to keep attention on it, the next things will be more hallucinated, let's call it. And the other case is when we give it a context. So we give a bunch of information of what AI is supposed to do, what kind of information it has, and so on. So it has a huge context, and it has huge amount of data, so it can keep attention to more specific words, fields, etc. So when it generates next tokens, next words, it's much more reliable, I would say, because it's not generating the attention, but it's keeping the attention from the data we provided in. So this is the core mechanism of the LLMs. And we are using RAG to give it proper data. So it has this context to keep attention on specific fields that we wanted to have, and we wanted AI to generate based on. So it's not some random thing.
Once again,
Yeah.
if you could just explain in simple terms RAG.
RAG. Exactly. So it's retrieval augmented generation, but it doesn't say anything really. But mostly it's the mechanism in our system that is retrieving some data and it's augmenting AI so it can keep generating things based on our information, our databases, our documents, our PDFs, or anything we want. And with this RAG, we retrieve the data from this system, and it gives this attention to LLM, so it can keep being reliable in the future.
Okay, and if we go through it step by step to understand how it works.
Okay, so the whole mechanism is always starting with your data. So you need to prepare somehow data, put it on a server, on Google Drive or SharePoint or anywhere, or even in AWS or Azure or any data server. From this data, we need to parse it somehow. In most cases, we run ETL process. So we extract the information, we transform it, and then we load it to our database. So when we start with extraction, we take it from the server and prepare it for the final destination. During the process, we transform it because we don't want like pure data, but we want specific fragments. We need to add some information, for example, what is the page of the document, what is the source of the document, any additional information that might be useful for AI and for the human. Because when we sometimes ask any ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, we get information, the source. For example, it's an URL or something. So we transform all of this data and keep, for example, URLs also. So we transform all the data and then we load it, for example, to Postgres database, SQL database, or MongoDB, depending on our use case. And in the meantime, we also add something called embeddings. So we just turn the text into vectors. So basically mathematical numbers that we can compare and see are they similar or not, because on numbers it's much easier. And then we can retrieve because we show what user said. We find similar things in our database that we can provide to our system, and then it can generate based on the data from our RAG system.
So if you were to point to like the most important shift here, it's that hallucination is no longer possible because all the data that's in the system is the data that you actually provided. Would that be correct?
Yes, close to correct, because the hallucination sometimes can also happen in any systems because LLM is also probabilistic. So it's just mathematical model that is calculating everything. And sometimes there is miscalculation. There is a small chance that something might happen. But with RAG, model is not making things up directly, and it can only make things up based on our data, to be honest. And there are also a few concerns, I would say, when we are talking about RAG systems, because it all depends on your data and the quality of your data.
Okay, sure. Obviously, we keep on repeating this sentence, garbage in, garbage out, and it's just so true. So once again, how does RAG stop hallucinations or reduce them significantly?
Yes, so with RAG system, we are able to provide relevant content, I would say. So for example, we can find top 10 things that match up our query. So when user asks something, we can find in database top matching things. In our system, for example, ChatGuru, we did one thing different because we are using agent there. So agent is to search in database. So the query is more precise because the retrieved data are more consistent with what user asked, because sometimes it's not so direct what we are asking for.
I'm sorry,
So-
Patrick, I'm going to have to
Yeah.
stop you, but there was a lag due to connection. If you could just repeat the last 2-3 sentences.
Yes. So with RAG system, we are trying to match, for example, top 10 things from the database to our query. And in ChatGuru, for example, we did something different because we are using the agent. So we have AI model that is deciding what to query for, because sometimes it's not so obvious for the user what she is asking for, because it's not a direct query or something, and we need to search for the information. So agent is doing it more reliably, so it can make 2, 3, or 4 searches for the top matching things with different approaches, sentences, different queries, rather than using one query from the user. So we switched from like matching top 10 results from RAG system to using agent, and agent is searching, for example, 2-3 times for top 10 things that AI is thinking is the best. And with that, we have much more reliable content, much more consistent information, and more precise. So we reduce also the chance for hallucinations, because sometimes user can ask something that is not in our data. And when AI is trying to retrieve it, it doesn't have this information. And there are two things that might happen. One, AI admits, doesn't know, and cannot answer because it's not in the data, or makes things up. And this is the more risky case, when it makes things up, because it seems that it used the data, but it never did. But you have some trust, you have some confidence in the system because you already saw some sources, and then something happens and you don't get proper results. And yeah, so
Isn't it possible to tune a tool, a solution such as, for example, ChatGuru, to never give answer when it ain't got the data? So basically, to just turn to I don't know, I don't have the relevant information as default.
yes, we are doing that because when we retrieve information, we can set up some borders, some threshold for the information to be at least similar in 60%, let's say, to original query. So we can filter out a lot of data, and then if we don't match enough data points, we can return from the RAG system information that there is no data about that, provide the user information that you cannot answer that. And it comes from the RAG system, so the LLM attention is focused on, I don't have enough data, I need to say that to the user, and there is no situation when AI is making things up.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it's not magic. And it's also not 100% bulletproof. So if you could share with us a little bit more on where a solution like that can still fail.
Okay, so the failing, it's It might happen because it all depends on the data. So if we have outdated data, if we have something wrong in the data, sometimes there are mismatched information. So we have two documents from two different periods of time, and they do not match, you will probably get like wrong answer, because in one document it can say you can do that, in other you cannot do that, or sometimes the data quality is not enough, so you have a lot of like edge cases. You can do that, but only in case of something, and you have like 20 such cases in your documents, and then AI is trying to match it, but the attention is split between these 20 edge cases, so it's much harder for LLM to decide on one thing and provide proper answer. So it can always happen. We are doing a lot of evaluations in NetGuru when we are preparing such a system. We have two main tools, I would say, for testing it. So when we are preparing, for example, ChatGuru, we load the data, we do all the RAG thing and so on. AI can answer, but we need to test it. Is it okay or not? And we need to know it like in scale, not based on our good feeling because we write like 2 times with the chat, okay, it's good. We are doing it like in the code. So we are writing test cases and preparing data sets. So we can run it like hundreds of times if needed. And we see the results, the time, the reliability, accuracy with like percentage numbers, so we know how many test cases failed or not. So we can ask who you are, for example, the simplest question, and chatbot should always, for example, answers with the company name, that it's chatbot and so on. And we can make sure it knows that. And it doesn't like try to say I'm GPT 5.5 or something like that, but it's specific system that was designed for specific company. And this part is done in the code. And we are keeping these data sets, the test cases with our AI QA team, because we have special quality assurance team doing that. And we have our AI engineers that are crafting the prompts, the RAG system, and so on. And they are cooperating to create that. And then it creates some kind of regression, So when we move the system to production, then we change something, we see maybe old tests may fail or not, we see the changes and how they affect the system. And then when we come to the production, we have, for example, Langfuse that we use the most, I think. And this is the system for observability. So we literally observe what are the questions, what are the answers, and we can automatically verify also them, score them if needed, and then we pick up like the worst possible answers from the AI. We come back to our system with data sets, with tests, and we can implement that. We can fix that and make sure other parts of the system are not breaking up because of our changes. So we have kind of constant feedback loop from the production to our development, and it also have like the guardrail to not break anything in the meantime. So it's pretty powerful, and I'm pretty proud of this system that we created here.
So if you could layer everything that you just said on top of the actual ChatGuru solution, I think you started mentioning ChatGuru when your connection wasn't that good. So also a sentence of introduction of what ChatGuru is and what you're actually talking about. And if you could just then put together the insights that you just presented with the actual solution that we've built to make chatbot development and launch faster.
Exactly. So, okay. So ChatGuru is our kind of white label system. So we can adjust it, fully customized for the client. And ChatGuru is an engine that has this RAG system built in. It has databases, and it has all the things that I mentioned with the agent, with retrieving information, making proper calls, and so on. So for the ChatGuru, when clients comes in, we can just make this ETL process. So we just extract the data from the client, transform them, and load them. And with that, we have like this engine running, and we can start talking with our chatbot. And in ChatGuru, we also implemented the testing scenarios, so we can test everything fully for the client based on his data. And we have the observability layer, so we can quickly set it up and see how it works in production. So basically, ChatGuru is an engine on its own, and it has proper test suite for everything related to LLMs and reliability of AI. And we have observability layer that we are using Linefuse as a provider.
And when it comes to actual results, we have implementations. One recent one that comes to my mind, interesting in terms of accuracy, is the one for ITI. I don't know if you want to talk about it a bit, but it is a chatbot that we built for the international team for implantology. And what was the purpose of this chatbot?
So international team of implantology has a lot of internal materials, and they wanted to use these internal materials for providing answers for students, the professor, the dentist, specialists, everybody that is part of this ITI initiative. And they wanted some chatbot that will be reliable, because here we are talking about medical things, so it cannot make things up and so on. So they needed like a professional chatbot that can support the people from medical environment based only on the materials from ITI. So it cannot use its own memory, its own ideas. It can only use the data that they provided, because they are sure of the data. They are part of some consensus that were made between, the doctors, the dentists, the professors, so the academics, and so on.
So here's where RAG is crucial for the proper functioning.
Exactly. And we implemented the ChatGuru. So ChatGuru is pulling all the materials from ITI. And it went pretty great, I would say. The data quality is also really good in that we've got. So it was really convenient for us to create such a system, because we have kind of small domain, because we focus only on dentists. We have only one medical field to cover, and we are able to retrieve all the data that are needed if someone asks anything. And with that, as I remember, we reached like 97% of accuracy with the answers.
I even remember 98. Actually, I just opened the case study, and it was actually 98% accuracy, and also near zero production hallucinations. So
exactly. Yeah.
So
we are keeping an eye on the system, and it's working really great, I would say, because we have tons of test suits. Our AI QA team did a wonderful job, I would say, and I would like to praise them. And our engineering team made also great job with implementing such a system, because, as you mentioned, 98% is really, really good. Sometimes it's hard even for human to reach such accuracy, I would say.
I'd say
for the professors or someone.
I'd say.
And the best part of this, it has, I believe, 2 seconds to the first token. When you ask questions, is just you get almost instant answer. You just wait 2 seconds. Sometimes even asking like any other system like Claude, ChatGPT, or anything takes more time because of this thinking process and so on. And here we could skip the thinking process, because AI doesn't have to think. It has all the data already. So the whole thinking process can be skipped, because we've got the data from the RAG system itself. So we got almost instant answers with almost no mistakes.
To sum up, Patrick, why can our partners, clients, people listening to us rest assured their chatbots work fine as long as they use RAG properly, and as long as they have data that's quality data? Why Why is that the case?
So I would say it's the base for any chatbot. So having the RAG system, it assures us that everything will be based on your data. So if you have data, it's much easier to create such a system. Then with ChatGuru, we have the engine already ready, I would say. So we can implement that really quickly. And we just need to connect your data because we separated it. Data is on your server. Sometimes it's API, sometimes it's database, sometimes it's just Google Drive storage or Confluence page or anything like that. So we can retrieve the information from there, put it in the engine, and then we keep the observability. We evaluate everything, keep control of the system, and make sure there are no hallucinations.
Basically, if it's not your data, it's not going to be part of the story.
Kind of, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the conversation. If anyone has questions in the audience to Patrick, we weren't really looking at the chat in the meantime, but Patrick will be happy to answer after the recording. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.